The Forgotten Farm. I never expected to find my destiny in something everyone else considered worthless. But life has a way of revealing value in the most unexpected places. My name is Emily Carson, youngest daughter of William and Victoria Carson, titans of the Boston finance scene. For 3 generations, the Carson family had dominated investment banking on the East Coast, with our family offices managing portfolios for some of the wealthiest families in New England. Growing up in our Beacon Hill mansion, I always felt like I was living in the shadow of my perfect older sister Olivia. She was groomed from birth to take over the family empire, fluent in 3 languages by 16, Yale undergraduate, Harvard MBA, and effortlessly elegant at every charity gala and board meeting. Our parents paraded her around like their crowning achievement. Me? I was the family disappointment. Instead of following the predetermined path to financial glory, I fell in love with environmental science and sustainable agriculture. My parents rolled their eyes whenever I talked about regenerative farming or carbon sequestration. "There's no money in dirt," my father would say dismissively, barely looking up from his financial reports. When I graduated with my degree in environmental engineering from UC Berkeley instead of an Ivy League business school, my mother acted like I'd personally betrayed the family legacy. They tolerated my phase, as they called it, assuming I'd eventually come to my senses and take my rightful place beside Olivia in the family business. But I never did. I was working as a sustainability consultant for a small firm in Chicago when I got the call. My parents had been killed when their private jet crashed during a storm on their way to a financial conference in London. The news hit me like a physical blow, not just the shock of their sudden deaths, but the realization that we'd never have the chance to truly understand each other. The reading of the will took place 2 weeks later in the sterile conference room of Patterson and Miller, our family's longtime attorneys. The room was filled with dark wood and old money, the kind of place where important people signed important papers that moved mountains of money from one pile to another. Olivia arrived in a tailored black Chanel suit, her grief contained behind designer sunglasses. Uncle Richard, our father's younger brother and the executor of the estate, sat at the head of the table with Mr. Patterson, reviewing documents with practiced precision. I sat awkwardly in my modest black dress from Nordstrom Rack, feeling like an intruder at my own parents' will reading. To our beloved daughter Olivia Victoria Carson, Mr. Patterson read in his measured baritone, "We leave the controlling interest in Carson Financial Partners, all shares in our various investment vehicles, our properties in Boston, New York City, and Palm Beach, and liquid assets in the amount of $50 million. Olivia nodded solemnly, as if she'd been handed exactly what she expected, which she had. To our younger daughter Emily and Carson, Mr. Patterson continued, and I felt my heart rate quicken, "We leave the Carson family farm in Leelanau County, Michigan." The room fell silent. Uncle Richard cleared his throat uncomfortably. "That's it?" I asked, my voice sounding small in the large room. Mr. Patterson peered at me over his reading glasses. "That is the extent of your inheritance, yes." Olivia reached over and placed her manicured hand on mine. "Don't worry, Em. If you want to sell the farm, I'm sure we can find a buyer. It's not worth much, but it might give you a little something to live on while you find your footing." The condescension in her voice made my cheeks burn. "The farm has been in the Carson family for generations," Uncle Richard explained, seeming almost apologetic. "Your great-grandfather purchased it before he made his fortune in banking. Your father always meant to sell it, but somehow never got around to it. It's basically a rundown apple orchard," Olivia added. "Dad called it his biggest tax write-off." I drove back to my hotel room in a daze. My parents, worth nearly $1 billion, had left me a neglected farm in northern Michigan while my sister inherited everything else. It wasn't just the money, it was what the decisions said about how they valued me. In their eyes, I wasn't worthy of the family legacy. I wasn't worth investing in. The next morning, I booked a flight to Traverse City, Michigan. If this farm was all I had, I needed to see it for myself. Northern Michigan in early fall was nothing like I expected. As I drove my rental car north up the peninsula, Following the GPS directions to the property, I was surrounded by rolling hills covered in trees displaying brilliant autumn colors. Lake Michigan glittered to my left, while cherry orchards and vineyards stretched across the landscape. After an hour of driving, I turned onto a gravel road marked by a weathered wooden sign that read Carson Orchards, EST 1923. The road wound through neglected apple trees, their branches heavy with unpicked fruit. At the end of the lane stood a two-story farmhouse with peeling white paint and a wide front porch. Behind it loomed a massive red barn, its color faded to a dusty crimson. As I stepped out of the car, the crisp autumn air filled my lungs. Despite the property's obvious state of disrepair, something about it felt right, like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. The key from Mr. Patterson's envelope slid into the farmhouse lock with a solid click. The door creaked open to reveal hardwood floors covered in dust and simple, sturdy furniture draped with sheets. Family photos hung on the walls, ancestors I'd never met but whose blood ran in my veins. There was something honest about this place, something real that our Boston mansion with its priceless antiques and perfectly arranged rooms had never possessed. I spent that first day exploring the house, finding old ledgers detailing apple harvests from decades past. The kitchen had an ancient gas stove and a large farm table where, I imagined, workers had once gathered for meals during harvest season. Upstairs, 3 bedrooms waited under a layer of dust, windows offering stunning views of Grand Traverse Bay in the distance. But it was the barn that called to me most insistently. Something about its imposing size, far larger than seemed necessary for a small apple orchard, piqued my curiosity. The barn door protested as I pushed it open, sunlight streaming through the dusty windows to illuminate the cavernous interior. Old farm equipment, barrels, and crates lined the walls. At first glance, it seemed like a typical barn, if oversized. But as I wandered deeper into the structure, something felt off about the dimensions. The interior space seemed smaller than the exterior suggested. I ran my hands along the rear wall, feeling the rough-hewn boards beneath my fingertips, when I noticed a section that looked slightly different from the rest. Remembering a trick my grandfather had once shown me during a rare visit to Boston when I was a child, I pressed firmly on 3 specific points of the wall. To my astonishment, a section swung inward, revealing a hidden door. Heart pounding, I pulled out my phone to use as a flashlight and stepped through the opening. A narrow staircase led downward into darkness. The air grew cooler as I descended, the stairs eventually opening into a vast underground chamber that took my breath away. The space was a fully equipped laboratory, seemingly frozen in time. Sophisticated equipment covered long workbenches, while filing cabinets lined one wall. Glass containers filled with soil samples sat on shelves beside microscopes and testing equipment. Charts and maps covered another wall, some areas circled in red with notes scribbled in the margins. At the center of the room stood a large desk, and on it, a leather-bound journal with Carson's Soil Rejuvenation Project embossed on the cover. With trembling hands, I opened it to the first page. Property of Edward Carson, 1962. For Emily's eyes only. Edward Carson, my grandfather, who had died before I was born. And somehow, he had left this for me, decades before I even existed. I sank into the chair at the desk and began to read. The journal detailed my grandfather's groundbreaking research into soil microbiomes and natural methods of restoring depleted agricultural land. He had discovered a unique combination of native mycorrhizal fungi and bacterial colonies in the soil beneath the orchard, ones that could potentially revolutionize sustainable agriculture. According to his notes, the Carson farm sat atop one of the most biodiverse soil ecosystems in North America, containing microorganisms that, when properly cultivated, could restore fertility to depleted farmland without chemical fertilizers. His research had been decades ahead of its time, work that was only now being recognized as crucial to sustainable farming. Further into the journal, I found a letter addressed to me. To my future grandchild who loves the earth. If you're reading this, you found what your father never bothered to look for. William was always too fixated on the financial world to see the true value beneath his feet. But I've been watching the family line, waiting for someone who could appreciate what I've discovered here. The soil beneath this worthless farm contains the future of sustainable agriculture. My research was just the beginning. With modern technology and the right approach, you could develop a microbial treatment that could revitalize depleted farmland across the country, even the world. I've established a trust fund at Northern Michigan Bank under the name Carson Soil Legacy. The account information is in the safe behind the soil classification chart, combination, October 23, 62. It should contain enough to get you started. This land isn't a punishment or an afterthought. It's the most valuable thing our family owns. Your father just never had the vision to see it. Trust the soil. It knows more than we do. Your grandfather, Edward Carson. That night, I slept in the farmhouse for the first time, my mind racing with possibilities. The next morning, I drove to the bank in Traverse City and presented my identification. The trust my grandfather had established had grown to nearly $5 million over the decades. Not a fortune by Carson standards, but more than enough to begin renovating the property and continuing his research. Over the next 6 months, I threw myself into the work. I hired a team of microbiologists from Michigan State University to help analyze my grandfather's samples and continue his research using modern techniques. We renovated the underground lab with state-of-the-art equipment while maintaining the farmhouse's rustic charm. The orchard, it turned out, had been deliberately planted with heirloom apple varieties that worked in symbiosis with the soil microbiome. We restored it first, using my grandfather's methods. The results were remarkable. Trees that local experts had declared beyond saving flourished under our care. I formed Northern Michigan Microbial Solutions, a company dedicated to developing soil restoration products based on my grandfather's research. Our first prototype microbial formulation showed promising results in university trials, restoring productivity to depleted agricultural land without the environmental damage caused by chemical fertilizers. Word of our breakthrough began to spread through the agricultural community. Sustainable farming publications ran features on our work. Organic farmers from across the Midwest began visiting the farm to see our methods firsthand. I was in the orchard, examining this season's first apple blossoms, when a sleek black car pulled up the gravel driveway. Olivia stepped out, looking as polished as ever in designer casual, where that probably cost more than my monthly operating budget. "So this is where you've been hiding," she said, surveying the property with undisguised skepticism. "Uncle Richard told me you'd actually moved here." "I'm not hiding," I replied, wiping my hands on my work jeans. "I'm building something." "On a defunct apple orchard?" She raised a perfectly shaped eyebrow. "Emily, be reasonable. I'm worried about you. You've always had these environmental fantasies, but living in this dilapidated place? You're a Carson. You belong in Boston, working with people of our caliber." The condescension in her voice was so familiar it almost made me laugh. "Would you like a tour before you pass judgment?" I offered. Reluctantly, she followed me through the renovated farmhouse, making little effort to hide her disdain for the simple furnishings and functional kitchen. But when I led her to the barn and revealed the hidden laboratory below, even Olivia couldn't maintain her air of superiority. "What is all this?" she asked, eyes widening as she took in the sophisticated equipment and research stations. "This is Grandfather Edward's legacy," I explained, showing her the results of our latest field trials. "He discovered something extraordinary here, a natural way to restore soil health that could transform agriculture. We're developing it into commercial products." "Products that farmers will buy?" she asked, the glimmer of financial interest appearing in her eyes. "Products that could eventually be used worldwide," I confirmed. "Our preliminary patent application was approved last month." For the first time in our adult lives, I saw something new in my sister's expression when she looked at me, respect, mingled with calculation. "You should come back to Boston," she said as we walked back to her car. "Carson Financial could help you scale this project. We have connections, investment capital. You shouldn't be doing this alone in the middle of nowhere." I smiled. I'm not alone. I have a team of brilliant scientists and local farmers who believe in this work. And I'm exactly where I need to be. After Olivia left, I received weekly calls from Carson financial representatives, each offering more attractive terms for investment capital and distribution partnerships. Each time, I politely declined. This wasn't just a business opportunity, it was a mission, and I needed to maintain control to ensure it was done right. A year after finding my grandfather's laboratory, Northern Michigan Microbial Solutions launched our first commercial product, Terra Nova, a soil inoculant that could restore microbial diversity to depleted farmland. The initial production runs sold out within weeks, primarily to organic farmers in the Midwest who had been struggling with decreasing yields. The success stories began rolling in, farms reporting 30 to 40% yield increases without chemical fertilizers, soil that retained water better during drought conditions, crops with higher nutritional content. Agricultural journals published peer-reviewed studies confirming our results. As we scaled production, I remained true to my grandfather's vision, ensuring that our products remained affordable for small family farms, not just large agricultural corporations. We established the Carson Agricultural Restoration Project, which provided Terra Nova at cost to farmers transitioning from conventional to organic methods. 2 years into our venture, a representative from Agri Global, one of the world's largest agricultural corporations, arrived at the farm unannounced. He offered $300 million for our patents and research, a staggering sum that would have made my parents proud. I turned him down without hesitation. 3 days later, Olivia called. "Are you insane?" she demanded. "Agri Global approached us after you rejected them. Do you have any idea what you're walking away from?" "I know exactly what I'm walking away from," I replied calmly. "They would bury our technology or price it out of reach for ordinary farmers. That's not why grandfather developed it, and it's not why I'm continuing his work." Emily, her voice softened into the tone she used when trying to manipulate board members, "Be reasonable. We're talking about generational wealth here. More than even mom and dad left me." "I already have generational wealth," I told her. "It's just not the kind you recognize." The following week, I received notice that Carson Financial Partners had filed a legal challenge to our patents, claiming that as Edward Carson's primary heirs, they had rightful ownership of any intellectual property derived from his research. I wasn't surprised, but I was prepared. My grandfather's explicit letter, the trust he had established in my name, and the fact that the farm had been legally transferred to me through my parents will create an airtight case. Their challenge was dismissed within months. By our 5th year, Northern Michigan Microbial Solutions had grown into Terra Nova Biosciences, with distribution in 42 countries and partnerships with agricultural universities on 5 continents. Our headquarters remained on the farm, though we'd expanded the facilities considerably, building research greenhouses and a larger production facility that employed over 100 local residents. What my parents had considered a worthless piece of land had transformed into a company valued at over $2 billion, not that I had any intention of selling. The true value wasn't in the monetary worth but in the thousands of farms restored to health, the millions of acres freed from chemical dependence, and the communities revitalized through sustainable agriculture. Olivia and I reached a fragile truce. She even invested personally in Terra Nova Biosciences' latest expansion, though I suspect it was more to share in our success than any true conversion to environmental values. Uncle Richard, to his credit, became one of our strongest supporters, sitting on our advisory board and helping us navigate the financial world without compromising our mission. 10 years after inheriting my worthless farm, I stood in the orchard at sunset, watching my employees leave after another productive day. The apple trees, now gloriously restored, were heavy with fruit. The laboratory my grandfather had built continued to yield new discoveries. The company he had envisioned was changing agriculture worldwide. I often wonder if my parents knew what they were giving me. Did they understand the treasure buried beneath this land, or did they truly believe they were sidelining me with an insignificant inheritance? I'll never know for certain. What I do know is that true value isn't always measured in portfolio diversification or market capitalization. Sometimes it's found in the invisible networks beneath the surface, in the connections that sustain life but go unnoticed by those fixed on more obvious forms of wealth. Standing in the orchard that evening, I felt my grandfather's presence. Not in some mystical way, but in the culmination of his life's work. He had seen something in me before I was even born, a kindred spirit who would understand that true stewardship of wealth isn't about hoarding it, but about using it to create something lasting and meaningful. On my 40th birthday, I received an unexpected package. Inside was a pocket watch that had belonged to my grandfather, forwarded by Mr. Patterson with a note explaining it had been held in trust with instructions to deliver it on this specific date. The watch still kept perfect time, and engraved inside was a message: "Time reveals what truly matters." That same year, we made our most significant breakthrough yet, a microbial formulation capable of restoring soil damaged by industrial pollution. Cities began using our technology to rehabilitate brownfields into community gardens and public parks. Former industrial zones transformed into vibrant green spaces. Word of our work reached environmental ministers in developing nations facing critical soil degradation. We established the Carson Earth Renewal Initiative, providing our technology at minimal cost to regions most affected by desertification and agricultural collapse. The irony wasn't lost on me that while Carson Financial managed money for the world's wealthiest, Terra Nova was helping the world's poorest reclaim their most valuable resource, fertile land to grow food. In a surprising turn, Olivia joined our board of directors after stepping back from daily operations at Carson Financial. "I'm tired of just moving money around," she confessed during a walk through the orchard. "I want to be part of something that creates actual value." Her financial acumen proved invaluable as we structured innovative funding mechanisms to scale our work globally while maintaining our core mission. We weren't just siblings anymore, but partners in a vision larger than either of us had imagined. My great-grandfather had built a financial empire that lasted generations. But my grandfather had planted seeds for something that could endure centuries, a way to heal the earth itself. The inheritance I'd once viewed as an insult had become my life's purpose. I established a scientific scholarship program for students from farming communities, naming it after my grandfather. Each year, we welcome a new group of young innovators to the farm, their fresh perspectives continually expanding our understanding of soil biology. The farmhouse that once seemed shabby compared to our Boston mansion has become my true home. I've kept its character intact while adding modern amenities and spaces for visiting researchers. The wraparound porch where I drink my morning coffee offers views of both the thriving orchard and the cutting-edge research facilities behind the historic barn. On the 20th anniversary of finding my grandfather's laboratory, we hosted a global agricultural summit at the farm. Scientists, farmers, and policymakers from 6 continents gathered to share knowledge about regenerative practices. As I gave the opening address, I could see my parents' puzzled faces in my mind. They never understood that true wealth grows from the ground up. Carson Orchards now produces some of the most sought-after heritage apples in the country, with waiting lists for our limited harvests. The farm has become a living laboratory, demonstrating how commercial agriculture can work in harmony with natural systems rather than depleting them. Last spring, my niece, Olivia's daughter, asked to spend the summer working at the farm. At 20, she reminds me of myself at that age, questioning family traditions, searching for meaning beyond balance sheets. Watching her discover the mysteries of soil biology, I see the legacy continuing into another generation. I sometimes wonder what my life would have been if my parents had left me my fair share of the family fortune. I likely would have used it to fund environmental causes, perhaps even started a similar company. But I wouldn't have had this deep connection to the land, this intimate understanding of the work that comes from having my hands in the soil day after day. The forgotten farm they relegated me to has become my greatest gift, not just to me, but to the world. In the end, the inheritance was perfect. They gave me exactly what I needed, though neither they nor I understood it at the time. As twilight settles over the orchard and the first stars appear above the restored barn, I think about value and legacy. My parents measured success in dollars and social standing. My grandfather saw it in the microscopic life teeming in a handful of soil. The truth is, all wealth comes from the earth eventually. Some people just have longer, more complicated ways of extracting it. I was fortunate to be given the direct route, straight to the source of all that truly sustains us. The most valuable inheritance wasn't the land or even my grandfather's research. It was the opportunity to discover my purpose, to find where I belonged in the world and the unique contribution I could make. Sometimes being overlooked is the greatest blessing. It forces you to look deeper, to find value where others see nothing. In the end, the forgotten farm remembered what my family had lost sight of generations ago, that true wealth isn't what you take from the world, but what you give back to it.